But let me switch gears slightly and come back a little bit to the violence point. But one of the things that I think has become kind of interesting in our relationship is that a certain class of theories that are not popular in the general population are traded back and forth between us, partially around the idea of how do we restart growth, how do we avoid violence. And I wanted to sort of alert people who are interested in the portal concept to this idea of orphaned or unpopular theories that are traded among a few, but maybe not among the many. So if we could go through a few of these. One of them has to do with how you and I both were much more, I think we believe that Trump was much more likely to get elected than the general population did. And this had to do with the theory of preference falsification, that people will broadly lie about what their true preferences are. So they'll keep one set of public preferences, but a hidden set of private preferences. And then in our culture, it gets revealed every 4 years, where you kind of have a Schrodinger's cat experiment. You find out where the country actually is.
Yes, I felt this was a dynamic that was going on in all these strange ways in 2016. There was a dinner I had in San Francisco about a week before the election with a group of center-right people. One of them was very prominent angel investor in Silicon Valley. And he said, I'm voting for Trump in a week, but because I'm in Silicon Valley, I have to lie. And so he was unusually honest about lying. And the way I lie is that I tell people I'm voting for Gary Johnson. So he couldn't say that he was going to vote for Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Like the facial muscles wouldn't work or something would go wrong. But Gary Johnson was sort of the lie that you could tell. And then if you actually look at what happened in the month before the election, the Gary Johnson support collapsed from, something like 6 to 2% or whatever. And as far as I can tell, all of that went to Trump. And the question one has to ask is, were these people, lying all along? Were they lying to themselves? Did they sincerely change their mind in the last month, or some combination of that? But yeah, one sort of vehicle for this preference falsification was that you had a third party candidate who was sort of a gateway to the transitions. This is what happened with Ross Perot, where the people went, eventually went to Clinton in 92 or John Anderson in 1980. So that's been a sort of repeated pattern. And I think that was one element of what was going on. But then I think there were also all these aspects of the Trump candidacy that people were super uncomfortable about, polite society, and so one would, the preference falsification was somehow perhaps much greater than in many other past contexts. And so, even the day of the election, the exit polls suggested that Trump was going to lose. And so there was still a 2 to 3% effect like this, literally the day of the voting.
Well, I voted for Bernie in the primaries, and I felt that both you and I had realized that the Clinton neoliberal story was a slow motion, one-way ticket to disaster if it kept going on election after election, so that both of us recognized that we had to get off that train.
Of course, one of the complicated questions in all this is, did people actually already sense this, and were they lying about this? So like everybody was saying all the way throughout 2016, most of the people were saying, well, there's no chance that, Trump's going to win. This is absolutely impossible. And I didn't really connect this before the election, but with 2020 hindsight, I wonder, was the fact that everyone was clicking on the Nate Silver 538 statistical polling model site a few times a day to reassure themselves that Hillary Clinton was still ahead and was going to win. Was that some sort of acknowledgement that on some maybe subconscious or barely conscious level, people sensed that it wasn't really as done a deal as they were constantly saying? So there's even a version of that question that I wonder about. Because there was something about the polling that took on this unusually iconic role in 2016. It was so important, and there was no truth outside the polls. I remember there was one of the Democrat talking heads saying something like, Republicans don't believe in climate change. They also don't believe in polls. That's why they're going to lose. And generally polls are right, but there was something about how all important they were in 2016 that might have been a tell that something was a little bit amiss?
Well, I think people knew, to my way of thinking, I think people knew that there was something very bizarre about this election. I think that the Bernie scare, that if the Democratic Party hadn't been so skillful in sidelining Bernie, and where the party regulars were, clearly backing Clinton, my sense is that it could well have been Bernie versus Trump, and that would have been enough to say the neoliberal story is over. So I think there was that fear that this was coming to an end. My sense of it was that the major reaction to Trump was sort of a class reaction, that it was, you are rejecting the entire concept of an educated group that knows the right things to say. And, you're clearly sort of not the kind of person who should be in the Oval Office, much more than the issue of whether or not Trump was going to be a warmonger or turn the U.S. into a police state, which, of course, doesn't seem to have happened as of this moment in 2019.
Yes.
Yes. But I guess what my sense of it was is that people really were shocked. Because I live in a left of center universe. The day after,
they certainly pretended to be shocked.
No, and there's no.
So look, I'll concede your point. They were pretty shocked.
They were pretty shocked.
But but I still have my question. Why were they clicking on the Nate Silver site a few times a day?
One version of it was, let's say, even if Hillary trounced Trump, but it wasn't enough, that would be a scary thing, given what Trump had been built up to, which is a orange Hitler. If you imagine that your country is supporting somebody who thinks all Mexicans are rapists, and is going to take the country back to the Middle Ages, it would be very disconcerting if such a person could get 20% of the vote. So I think that the poll had its own significance.